Hey guys, welcome back to GiveForce. My name is Paul and today we're taking a look at the Trustfire MiniX keychain light. But first of all, thank you to Trustfire for sending this along for review purposes. However, whilst I did receive this product for review, I received no monetary compensation for providing the video, and Trustfire have no input into the final product, early access to the video, or any input on my opinion. This is entirely just my experience with the light. First of all, let's go ahead and jump into a bit of a size comparison. First of all, with channel staples, a 91mm and a 58mm Sasami knife, which are just glare-tastic. Of course, we have multiple dimensions. And then getting a little bit more torch or flashlight relevant, a AA and a AAA. And everyone loves a little bit of a girth comparison. And some more relevant keychain options for comparison. So we have a bevy of Olight options, so the i3E and the i1R2 EOS, then the iMini 2 and the i1R2 Pro. The names do get a little bit convoluted. And finally, as a non-Olight point of comparison, here is a Rovivan. I believe this is the A8X. This is an older micro USB model, but the size proportions don't really change that much generation to generation. Next, into a design overview. Here we have an aluminium or aluminum body with a plastic end cap with a nice little attachment point for a lanyard. Here we have some milling for both grip and heat dissipation, and we have some nice flattened corners. And here we have some billboarding, so 3.7 volt, 300 milliamp hours, serial number, that kind of thing. We have one button operation with a built-in LED indicator, and behind a rubber boot cover we do have our USB-C port. And then we have two emitters. This does come in two different versions, a UV second emitter and a red light second emitter. I did opt for the red light second emitter option. And then otherwise it is IP66 water resistant, and then does also come in at about 22 grams for weight. Going into the UI and that kind of performance, this does operate on the more common Trustfire UI, which it varies from a lot of the standards, so that is something to bear in mind. If you just press it once, you're just going to get this to indicate, hey, that's not working, because Trustfire locks out by default. So you press and hold to come on, and in this case, jump straight to red. Okay. This is a little hard underneath all these lights, but if you press and hold, you can see it goes on first into your main mode, and you're just going to press to step through the brightnesses. And what happened the first time, and then press and hold to turn off. I couldn't see it turn on underneath the lights, but if you press and hold, first it goes onto that, but if you then press hold, it will then go onto your second emitter. As this is the red light version, we have red, and then just pressing here just gives you kind of a different version of flashing. There's no alternative brightnesses for the red, which I would have preferred, but we'll jump into that a little bit later. And one more UI thing is that this does actually have a lockout mode, so whilst the light is off, if you double click, you'll see it flashes, and that is now in the lockout. So we're getting flashing here rather than indication on the button. If you press and hold, you're not going to get anything. To come out of lockout, you just double click, and then that will come straight on. Again, the Trustfire UI is a little bit unusual as far as UIs go, but we'll talk about that a little bit further on. Now let's go into brightness and runtimes. So feel free to pause and read through this at your own leisure. We have a moonlight mode of 1 lumen for 152 hours, a low of 30 lumens for 327 minutes, a middle of 90 for 136, and a high of 320 for 56. The red is going to run for 163 minutes, and if you had the UV version, that would run for 12 hours. Obviously, there is no step-down information in this, particularly on high, but even on stuff like medium, as the battery decreases, and on high as you hit thermal limits, this is going to step down. It just will. All lights are going to. They just have not provided that information here. It is something to bear in mind. Whilst this will run at 56 minutes on high, you're more likely going to get a high initial, and then it's going to step down through the other modes. So something to just bear in mind. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the pros of the MiniX. First of all, I will say this is much lighter and more portable than I expected. I knew that this was marketed as a keychain light, but from the promotional images that I saw, I kind of imagined this to be roughly like 30% bigger. It, in my head, was more like some of Nightcore's options where the keychains technically, but they are substantially large and thicker. This is actually quite a nice option that would go on a keychain quite well. I'm more inclined to smaller keychain lights, more compact, so I would personally put this probably with a glow tag or one of these little guys, and use this as a dedicated light in a pouch or in the fifth pocket of jeans. But the portability is something definitely to note, especially since you are getting two emitters with a secondary option. It's just great. USB-C recharging, again, I'm not a huge fan of rubber covers, but as far as it goes, this one isn't bad, and it's not claiming to be super water resistant anyway. It's only 66. So USB-C charging is good. You're not going to need any special chargers for it. Obviously, I would not count on this cover lasting forever. It will perish at some point. Getting two emitters, again, strong option. I like having red. UV is very useful. I just have a lot of other UV lights, so I went for red. If you don't have a UV light, then I strongly consider getting this in UV should you want it. It is a nice alternative light source to have. And finally, just the brightness is both on the low end and the high end gives you a nice good range. Now there will be a YouTube short up here showing you the beam shots. This is more than capable enough for acting as your walking light, getting home, looking underneath the table, just light duty EDC light purposes. This would definitely take care of all of that. And finally, just appearance wise, this does come in a variety of colors. I went for this blue because it just looks absolutely lovely. I think this is a very attractive looking light. The accent color of the bronze button, how it looks with the LED indicator inside. I think this is a very attractive light, and I think this would match stylistically with a lot of options for your EDC. But let's go ahead and look at the cons of this, and it's a common theme with Trustfire, unfortunately, that I have to say that the UI is going to hold this back. If this had a bit more of what I will say is a conventional UI, then this would be a lot more appealing. And where this falls down is mainly two sides. One, press and hold to turn on. That's not necessarily a bad thing, particularly as this is marketed as a keychain light. So some kind of default lockout isn't a bad thing at all there. Whereas on some of their larger lights, it can be more annoying. That's understandable here. But the double press to go into this additional lockout mode is, one, it's very unintuitive, because double press on almost all of the major light manufacturers I can think of goes into turbo. Going into lockout when the UI already has kind of a pseudo lockout function is frustrating, and a double click is not like the hardest thing in the world to do accidentally, particularly in a pocket if this is on keys where a bunch of stuff is going to be pressing against it. So the UI is not the greatest. It is what mostly holds this back, in my opinion. It's the same with all Trustfire lights. If you're not switching between them, or if you have other Trustfires, let's say your full size is going to be the Mini X3, and then you just want something smaller for your keys or for a lighter carry, you're going to get familiar with the pros and cons of the UI. It's going to be more natural for you. It doesn't really matter. But if you're flipping between, or if you just have a collection, or you have some lights that just suit other roles better, then going back to this is going to be very unintuitive, and you're going to find yourself locking out when you want brightness, and it's just something to bear in mind. Otherwise, I can't speak to the UV version, because obviously I don't have that version, but going through to the red, I don't see any good reason why there isn't multiple brightnesses here. The primary use for red light is going to be to maintain your night vision. I have 3 different studio lights here. You can see how bright this is, right? This is very, very bright. This is going to wash out your night vision and dazzle you, particularly if you shine it on something like a map or something you're trying to read where you're going to get that bounce back from the page. This is just too bright. Now, for walking, this brightness is actually pretty good. You can use this as a walking red light quite well. But I see no good reason why this shouldn't be multi-brightness like the white emitter is. Because whilst having a flashing red for signaling purposes is great, there's no reason why that couldn't be on a different UI and just pressing would step through like you have for, you know, the normal. It's just a weird artificial limitation that makes the red light really impractical, to be honest. If I had the option between how it is now and having it at half brightness with no ability to change the brightness, I'd probably go dimmer, because with red light you tend to want it to be a bit dimmer, because red or not, it will wash out your night vision just by how bright it is. So that is something to bear in mind. Overall, I like this light, and depending where you get it from, the price ranges from like a tenner to $25. There will be an official link to the Trustfire store down below. However, if you want to shop around, that is a thing you can do as well for the best price. This is good value for money. The UI, particularly not being able to alter the red brightness and the lockout thing, those are the only real downsides here. This is a well-designed keychain light, fifth pocket light, and I don't really have any substantial complaints besides the UI and the red light brightness. I find myself picking this up just to have like a lightweight thing in sweatpants pockets sometimes from time to time, well after I had finished my review thoughts on it. So if you're interested and this has caught your eye, or you're just looking for another keychain option, I can strongly recommend this. Again, there will be a link down below. Thank you again to Trustfire for providing this review sample. And whilst you're down there, I would greatly appreciate if you could let me know your thoughts on the MiniX or Trustfire as a whole down in the comment section below. And whilst you're down there, if you could just like, subscribe, all that standard YouTube stuff, it does help to grow the channel. So thank you, I've been Paul, and I'll see you in the next video.